Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony, which today commemorates the service and sacrifice of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in the Australian Defence Force as part of the memorial's NAIDOC Week activities. We acknowledge the original custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also welcome all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today or are watching online. My name is Richard Cruz, and we warmly welcome the family of Private Christopher Wilson Carter, whose story will be read shortly by Major General Marcus Thompson from the Australian Army, who is the great-great-nephew of Private Carter. We're honoured to acknowledge Vice Admiral Ray Griggs, Chief Executive Officer of the National Indigenous Australian Agency, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. At first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Christopher Wilson Carter. Christopher Carter was born in 1887, the son of Marjorie and Christopher Wilson Carter of Greenwald, a small rural community in southwest Victoria. His mother Marjorie was a Gunditjmara woman who was reportedly brought up from infancy by Mrs. Flora Robertson of Coonawarra Station near Mortlake. Young Chris attended the local Greenwald Public School. In May 1916, he enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force. He entered camp at Ballarat and from there went to Broadmeadows Camp in Melbourne, where he trained until the 11th of September 1916, when he embarked on the troop ship Euripides, bound for overseas service. Arriving in England in late October, Private Carter joined the 6th Battalion in France towards the end of 1916. By then, the battalion had taken part in the landing at Anzac Cove and the later evacuation, and then returned to Egypt to reorganise before joining the war on the Western Front. Having fought at Pozières in France and Ypres in Belgium in 1916, the battalion returned to the Somme in winter, undertaking defensive duties and patrols into no man's land. In early 1917, German forces pulled back to the Hindenburg Line, a series of defensive positions that had been built to strengthen German lines during the winter of 1916-1917. After an initial assault around the village of Bullecourt failed to penetrate the line, British commanders made preparations for a second attempt. Artillery began an intense bombardment of the village, which by the 20th of April had been virtually destroyed. An infantry assault was set for the early morning of the 3rd of May. Elements of the 2nd Australian Division attacked east of the village, hoping to pierce the Hindenburg Line, while British troops attacked Bullecourt, which was finally taken and held. German resistance was fierce, and when the offensive was called off in mid-May, few of the initial objectives had been met. On the 9th of May 1917, Chris Carter was killed in action near Bullecourt. There was some initial confusion about the manner of his death, but later reports were found indicating that Private Carter and another man had been hit by a high explosive shell near a support trench at Bullecourt. The trench collapsed, but the men were dug out. Private Carter was described as having suffered from serious head wounds and was fearfully crushed and knocked about. He died just after he was freed. He was buried alongside the trench and his identity disc placed on a piece of board to identify the grave. Chris Carter was 30 years old. His gravesite was lost during later fighting, and today he is commemorated at the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux, which lists 10,773 names of soldiers of the Australian Imperial Force who have no known grave. A memorial service was held in Chris Carter's hometown, with the Hamilton Spectator reporting on one of the largest congregations that had ever been present at St Alban Church, Greenwald, attended on Sunday to mark the respect in which the late Private Carter, who was recently reported killed in action somewhere in France, was held, and at the same time to indicate their deep sympathy for the bereaved parents and family. The church was draped in purple and white, together with the British flags and autumn flowers. Chris Carter's name is listed on the roll of honour to my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Christopher Wilson Carter, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. The going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.